Well, good evening, everyone, to this meeting of the Town Council. This will be the final meeting of this council in the 3 years that we've been together, as the next time this council meets will be after an election taking place on May. So I don't know how many of us is that around this table, but certainly it will be the last time that 3 of our most esteemed councillors will be sat at this table, and I'm sure that they will be speaking a bit later in the meeting. But first of all, before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. There is no scheduled fire alarm practice tonight, so if we hear the fire alarm, it is a genuine fire alarm, at which point we would like to leave the building by the stairs that you came up, and leave the front of the building. If that is somehow blocked by smoke or fire, there is another fire escape that leads on the other side of this wall downstairs, and then fire from out here in the yard. Please don't use the lift if there is fire. Secondly, if you're wishing to have a comfort break during the meeting, there is a toilet. It's just out this door. If you turn to the right, it's immediately on there. So we begin this meeting with public participation, and I have a list of 4 speakers who wish to speak tonight. If you would like to come to the end of the table to speak to councillors, one of the councillors might turn a microphone in your direction, and if you wouldn't mind keeping your talk to about 3 minutes, that would be very useful. The first person on this is Mrs. Love, who would like to speak about public space, protection order, and governance.
Thank you for having me. I'm a pilgrim to Glastonbury for over 30 years, and I've lived here for 2 years now. I don't think the microphone's working. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I've been a pilgrim to Glastonbury for 30 years, and I've lived here for 2 years. So I'm a UKCP registered psychotherapist with 20 years experience in trauma. I've worked in London hospitals, I've worked with looked after children, survivors of the care system, vulnerable adults. So much of my work has involved safeguarding. I've worked in low secure units with people with brain injury and so on. So I just include that to bring to the table some of my background. And I currently am liaising with the travelling community, many of whom have had involvement with services in the past. I know that there's been talk here of the caravans on the West Kennet Grove area and the Cinnamon Lane area. Very sadly, we should tell the council that we lost one of the travellers this week. Gary Turner took his own life, hung himself from a tree. So the community is currently in shock. I just wish to bring to the table that I'll continue to provide low cost and accessible therapeutic interventions. I do wish to consider everyone in the community. I don't think that these issues are one-sided, but I do wish to bring to the table that there have been 4 further suicide attempts this week, 4, related to the threat of eviction, the feeling that people have nowhere to go. So I am overwhelmed. I will continue to do my best to provide accessible therapeutic interventions. But the truth is that if we evict travellers on the threat of antisocial behaviour, we may reinforce the idea of them as bad children. Many are from backgrounds of abuse and neglect. So I don't pretend to have the solutions, but I will continue to be, I hope, effective and helpful bridge between the people of Glastonbury, and I do approach the table with respect, and I'm doing my best to not be adversarial in the face of some very emotional things. I wish to take part in Grown Up, honouring association with everyone in Glastonbury, and I am here for the benefit of all, but I felt that the council should be aware of the devastating things that are unfolding on the ground with people who have very traumatic histories and have already been excluded sometimes from their parental homes. You know something about this, you don't need me to educate you. That's what I wanted to bring to the table and to take part in discussing all inclusion and solutions that bring safety for everyone. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. So next on the list is Laura Sorensen, tourism and
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Yes, this is about litter, locals, visitors, and tourists. During the first lockdown, I took to going for walks, as many people did, noticed a lot of litter lying about, and decided to do a bit of litter picking. I contacted the town hall to see if they had any litter picking equipment, which at the time they didn't. This was in 2020. So I was told that Mendip District Council lent out picker sticks, so I went and got 10, and then did litter picking with others, and so that was going quite well. I started to think in 2021 that the litter picking could become a regular event in and around Glastonbury. So I made a banner and I put some posts on Facebook and phoned and emailed friends and other people I've got to know through the litter picking. And then by this time the town council had purchased some sticks, high-vis jackets, gloves, bags and hoops. So I thought it would be quite a good idea if a town councillor came to see people off. This was on the last Sunday of the month, for the purposes of just getting to know each other. And Ian Much came on the first litter pick with his dog and came around with us, and we collected about 10 bags of trash and a pram and various things. And then after we'd done this litter pick, we had a coffee together at Heathleys, and that helped us get to know each other better. And then in September, I think I put out a blanket email to councillors inviting someone to join us. I didn't get a response. So I targeted one Mr. Councillor John Curie, who kindly came to see us off. He had relatives staying, so he couldn't do more than that, but it's always appreciated that a councillor says thanks to the people who turn up and just see them off. In October, Councillor Ian Tucker came to say hello, and he was busy with trees or something, so he couldn't stay, but again, it was nice to see him. I tried to contact another councillor in November, but didn't try hard enough as nobody came forward. Or in October, we did dress up as well in Halloween costume, which some Spanish tourists were quite interested in. In December, we didn't pick because it clashed with Christmas, and then in January and February, I must admit, I ditched the banner and tried to contact a councillor, but a group of people did litter pick with me, so that was good. In March, we turned up, and there were about 7 of us outside here, and then a notice on the door of the Tourist Information Office said they won't open until 12 that day. But I didn't know that, nobody had told me, so unfortunately we didn't litter pick. Anyway, I've gathered opinions, and the general consensus is that maybe the town council should be the civic point for organising monthly litter picks. So it's sort of known now, the last Sunday in the month, it's known, people are asking about it. It's easy to do. I would just suggest a proper banner is made, because mine's a bit rubbish. And that could be put on the front of the wall a week in advance, and just put it on the website and Facebook. I think that's fairly easy to do. I'm unable to do it anymore. I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking Scarlett in the back office for all her help, any other council officials who have helped, and all the lovely litter pickers I have met. Some families came from the street, and somebody came from Panborough, and all sorts. So there are also some students from St Dunstan's School who made some posters which are available to the council if they want to use them. And I'd like to think that the litter picks will carry on, because they're quite vital to a town which is so reliant on tourists and visitors, and it should look clean, cared for and welcoming. So I hope the litter picks will continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, it is.
Thank you all for all that they do. May I just suggest that perhaps Saturday may be better. Some of us have Sunday as a day for us and go to certain
There were plenty of people who came on a Sunday there.
Big one?
Plenty of people who came on a Sunday.
Okay, just a suggestion. Yeah, well done.
Thank you very much. Next on the list, I have Chris Davis, tourism.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, councillors. I had hoped to bring this up a few months back, but unfortunately I couldn't get a space, or there was a meeting where I couldn't make. Now, I've got some friends who live down in Devon, on the edge of Dartmoor. They've got a business down there. And it was sad to hear something that some of their customers had said to them. And that was that they had visited Glastonbury, very nice place, but they visited St John's Church. They went into the church, lovely church, came out, and what was there for them? People in the porch drinking, swearing, and generally making a nuisance of themselves. People in the churchyard, more or less moving around, drinking on the tombstones. And their view was, well, sorry, we're not coming back to Glastonbury again, because it's not very inviting. And if that's the sort of word that's going around the country, Glastonbury is not going to have many tourists. I mean, Saturday morning, I drove up the high street, past St John's Church, and lo and behold, on the pavement there was all this graffiti. And I mean graffiti, chalk all over the place. People sprawled out doing it. And the tourists that wanted to come by Could they get through? They had difficulty. I was glad to see on Monday morning that this was sort of more or less erased. But it doesn't stop there. Down near the town, the bottom of the town hall, down the bottom of the high street there on the corner, we have people doing graffiti. And what are they doing? They're right on the edge of the pavement, backside and feet out on the road, being a general nuisance to the traffic. We've had enough trouble with people parking down there. And no wonder the traders have been complaining about the situation of what's been going on at St John's and everything else. Where are the people that are supposed to be doing something? I thought there was supposed to be a no drinking zone there, but it doesn't appear to be. I really think the council should do something about it, because otherwise you won't have any tourists. But one saving grace for that, of course, is you won't need a park and ride, and so that will save some money on the town deal fund. Thank you very much. Before I go, one thing I would like to say, my appreciation is to all the services of our two county councillors, Terry, who's not here tonight, and Liz, for all of the work that they have done for Glastonbury, because without that, there's a lot of things that have happened while they've been in place that wouldn't have happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lindsay McDougall, your brief.
I don't know whether you're aware that the PCSOs can only empty the boats, they can't arrest people. We really only have PCSOs as a deterrent here, so we do need more police. And the other thing I wanted to say was that I was a bit appalled to learn that licensing, that Royston's Garage has got a new alcohol licence. And I don't really know what's happened in the consultation process, because that doesn't seem to be appropriate, considering how that comes on.
But they don't need to go there for the drink. They only have to go across the road to the co-op, which is open from early in the morning till 8 o'clock. And that's where they pick up all their booze.
Thank you very much. Finally on the list I have Chris Black, Town Centre pedestrianisation. Mr. Black, okay. Thank you very much for your participation. We now move to the point of the evening where, just before we begin the formal business of the meeting, I'd like to ask you to join me in the silent minute. Before we do, perhaps if Mrs. Glover, if you wouldn't mind lighting the unitary candle for us. The light and
So just like this candle for the sacredness and quality of everyone's life.
thank you. I'd like to ask you to join me to observe the silent minute. And while we do, perhaps we can just reflect on those who passed over. And I'm sure myself, some of the councillors here knew Barry who was mentioned in our last session. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Before we move into the business of the meeting, as I mentioned earlier, this is the last meeting of this current council, brought short to a 3-year period by the unitary authority elections. And I'm very conscious that 3 of the longest serving and most esteemed councillors are not standing for re-election. And I asked all 3 that they would be happy to say a few words, because to me it's quite a momentous occasion that they won't be at this table as councillors again. And Councillor Coles, being one of the councillors in question, I said that he would be happy to speak at this point before we go into the agenda properly. And I'm very honoured to say, Councillor Coles, thank you for all your service to the council, and we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Thank you, Your Worship. After being on Glastonbury Town Council for 23 years, I have decided not to stand in the local elections on May the 5th. I had the honour of being the Mayor of Glastonbury twice, in 2006, 2007, and 2010 and 2011. I was also a Mendes District Councillor for 20 years, Vice Chairman for 2 years, Vice Chairman of the Licensing Board, and also the Planning Board. And over the years, I've given quite a few people advice on planning issues, not allowed to predetermine any plans, but we can give the applicants some advice. The saddest issue on my second mayorship was the cutting down of the holy thorn tree, and the person who did the deed has never been found. When I was first elected, the late John Branson, MBE, took me under his wing and guided me and gave me much advice. He said, "Don't worry, you'll soon catch on." Also, during my second mayorship, I was invited and my wife to go to the holy island of Greece, Patmos, where we met the mayor of Patmos and the abbot in the monastery. Patmos is where the last book of the Bible was written, the book of Revelation by St. John. I hope many people who have had debt problems over the years, including rent and other debt problems. In 2003, I raised £860 for the first skateboard park, plus a young girl at St. Dunstan's School raised £300, totaling £1,060. Now, I remember rightly, Nick, you was there on the grand opening that day for 10 o'clock. Yeah. And 10 o'clock tried to have a go, but you really fell down on his back. That was a wooden construction. It didn't last long because of the made from wood, and now we've got a concrete park. I would like to thank everyone who helped me for all the years. Having been in the Somerset Fire Brigade in Glastonbury for many years, my total service to the public in Glastonbury comes to 51 years. As a member of the public, I wish the new council well. I shall from time to time attend the council meetings in the public gallery. I make one plea to the new council who are elected: please sort out the travel issue. There are far too many of them in the area parking on public roads. Hopefully we can get a licensed travel site somewhere in the local area. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we move into the business proper of the meeting to receive apologies for absence.
Yes, Your Worship, we have 2 apologies this evening, one from Councillor Christine Pryor and County Councillor Terry Napper.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors' declarations of interest is particularly pertinent to anything on the agenda tonight.
Silver Tandil, Your Worship.
So, Councillor Tandil, I also have to declare an interest in Tandil, and Councillor Serena Ranger will also be interested in Tandil. Councillors, if you become aware of any interest that you may wish to declare as we move forward, please do so at any point. So, councillors, we now come to approve and sign the correct record of the minutes of the town council meeting. Thank you very much. I do apologise. A slightly different alteration to the agenda, as I've been reminded, and a welcome one, is to present the 2021-22 Citizen of the Year Award. And I'm delighted to, on behalf of the council, say that the award has been made to Councillor Liz Lysham, who has done a sterling job over the years as our county councillor, but also is just a remarkable member of the Glastonbury area community, and is somebody that I'm sure we all would like to thank heartily with a round of applause for everything you have done. Thank you. Do you wish to say anything?
Thank you. I will speak later on the county council's report. I just want to really thank you for this. I was born in North May Terrace and then grew up in Hamlet Street. And your birthplace never leaves you. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, your birthplace is always your birthplace. And I've been truly honoured to work for Glastonbury for the last 5 years. And I'll miss moments like when I was getting off the coach at Kingsley Point and told them I was the county councillor for Glastonbury. And to see their faces was an absolute picture. So I will never forget that, but I'll never forget the fact that people all over the country know Glastonbury for so many good reasons. And it is and always will be a very, very special place. Thank you.
So, and such a well-deserved award, I must say. Thank you, Liz. So we now move on to approve and sign the correct record of the minutes of the town council meeting on Tuesday, the 8th of March, and also councillors the special meeting that was held on. I would like to draw your attention to page 54. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. A correction on the declaration of interest, the last one, which mentions me. I did not receive income, but I did live at this property.
Thank you very much. Anything else on page 54? I draw your attention to 55. 56.
Sorry, Worship. Can I ask, is there any news about the Polyform Kew Gardens?
No, Your Worship. No, nothing at all. Sorry.
Thank you. So page 56. 57. 58. Councillor Martin.
I wanted to raise under item 199 about the move over from the Ealing outreach worker to Mendip, and that Mendip is only there for another year. And I wondered if anything more had been heard about how ongoing help is going to be for us in this. Thank you.
I'm not sure if any of the district councils present. No, I'm very no. Joe, have you heard anything?
Your Worship, I have written to the Chief Executive of Mendip District Council. I've yet to receive a response other than a holding response. However, I did receive a telephone call from Councillor Coppell, who was in dialogue through his office with with the Ealing Centre, and I am aware that Councillor McDougall and Smythe both visited the Ealing Centre to establish a little bit more detail on the matter. So, whilst I have yet to receive a response formally from the Chief Executive of Mendon District Council, I feel that our District Councillors and Town Council have engaged and are continuing to engage.
Thank you, and I suspect that there may be something that you might like to report to this in your councillors report. Councillor?
It's really a question, whether it's actually amended district council to employ some new housing officers to replace what we then do. Good luck.
So, councillors, perhaps we can move this subject to district council report, and perhaps we can just, if we have anything else to say at that point, but we're still going to page 59. So, councillors, I'm also going to ask you to observe page 60. And page 61. Councillors, do I have your agreement to sign these minutes with the amendments suggested as a true record of those two meetings? Thank you. Whilst I do so, there is a summary of actions from the previous meeting, which should be within your papers. Resolution from Planning Committee, property and assets. I wonder whether there is anything which the Chair or Deputy Chair of Planning would like to mention, or the Chair of Property and Assets in relation to these resolutions. If not, they can be noted.
Your Worship, if I may, you jumped to item 7, which is fine. I don't mind you doing that. Indeed, but item 5 is a summary of the actions from the previous meeting.
I do apologise.
And there were just two. One I've already reported on, which was the writing to the Chief Executive, and I've already shared with you that outcome. And the second was you asked for the flying of the Ukrainian flag to be above the town hall, and that has been doing now for the last 3 weeks. I'll be raising that under item of correspondence before the Worship.
Thank you very much. I do apologise, councillors, for jumping to item 7. I also noticed that I have skipped the police report.
Your Worship, I'll point forward before you jump to the police report, and I didn't challenge it at the time, but item 197 on the previous meeting, because I believe it is properly recorded, so it's not a matter of the minutes being improper. But the action that is due, as you will see after that meeting, it says due to Councillor Kerry's absence, this motion was withdrawn with the intention that it be included on the agenda of the next meeting. It's disappointing to see that there aren't more potential councillors here. There are 28 on the list want to be elected, but there aren't that many here tonight. It's a shame they're not here. Because the motion, which is in public domain, the motion that I proposed and Councillor Tupper seconded, read as follows. Aware of the shortage of affordable housing in the town, Glastonbury Town Council plans to build some carbon neutral, eco-friendly properties on land it owns and will continue to own at Lowerside Lane, which is currently being used for allotments. Accordingly, a plot was purchased in 1995 on Conmore Grove to enable the Lowerside allotments to be moved there and free the council land for housing. Plans are in hand to divide the Conmore site with 61 allotments, and the council is looking for other appropriate allotment sites. To enable the plan to proceed and to provide affordable housing for Glastonbury families and future income for the town council, this council supports these proposals as a long-term aspiration of the council. My purpose in putting that on the agenda, and the fact that I got over the day of the meeting and therefore couldn't attend, and it was to be postponed to this meeting, but it hasn't appeared on the agenda. But my purpose was to point out to incoming councillors and councillors who will be coming again, that you don't come in with a clean slate. The council has decided things as long-term strategy because they think it's important. And one of those, and you saw it was first time in 1995, was to buy land that could become housing land. Now, this is a process that has gone over many years, where we moved allotments out further from the town and used land for other purposes. Indeed, the health centre down in Faversham Lane, for those of you who don't know, was built on allotments, and the allotments were moved down to the common wall. So, and before that, actually, I believe in the 20s, there was allotments moved and building put on them in town as well. So it's a long-term issue for the town council to try and improve housing conditions. And that was my purpose in putting, and Councillor Tucker's, in putting this on the agenda, to commit the council to a long-term strategy that has been going on. And it was decided, it says, due to Councillor Keary's absence, this motion was withdrawn with the intention that it be included on the agenda of the next meeting, but it hasn't been. So I'm introducing it here now. It's interesting too, and other councillors will want to know perhaps the timeline of what happened about this motion, because on Monday of last week, I was contacted by the town clerk who asked me if I wanted the motion to go ahead with the wording that there was that I read out. I talked to Councillor Tucker and said, are you happy with the wording? And he said he was, I said I was. So we asked the town clerk to go ahead with putting this proposal on the agenda for this meeting, but it does not appear. I was told that at the town meeting last Tuesday, this issue came up, and quite rightly so, because there were representatives of the allotment holders who seemed to think we were going to sell the land, but as I read out, there wasn't an intention to sell the land, it was to move to a new allotment site. And at that meeting, I think 4 people spoke about the allotments, and when I say spoke, they made statements about the allotment. The one was by the allotment representative, which had some defects in it. Councillor Lund spoke, I spoke to correct some issues. I think Councillor Rooney Dufferin may have spoke. But either way, we spoke at the meeting. There was no debate, and there were enough councillors at that meeting, I think there was 8 councillors there, to know what took place. So there was no debate, there was just statements made to try and correct either issues that had come forward, and that was what happened. However, I had a message from the town clerk on Wednesday morning, which was to me and Councillor Tucker, and it read, I understand that at last evening's meeting, that was the town meeting, the presentation on the allotments expanded into a debate. I would challenge that. There was no debate, there were just statements made, and other councillors will put their own reading on the future provisions. This morning I received a request from the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor not to include the motion you brought forward for debate on the next agenda. I sought the advice of the Somerset Associated Local Council, who advised that controversial reports should not be tabled during a period of PERD. The period of PERD is the time leading up to another an election when controversial issues should not be brought forward. So, therefore, I have had to follow their guidance and remove the item from the agenda. Thank you. I have no problem with that. The town clerk sought advice, but I didn't feel it was controversial. And I felt, having been told, the town council, having been told by the mayor and deputy mayor that there was a debate at the town meeting, I thought was not correct, and I'm saying it now. And also, the town meeting is irrelevant to the council meetings, only in the sense that no decisions are made that bind anybody to anything. If there are funds made at the town meeting, they come to the council meeting to actually see if the council agree or not. The town meeting, I might say, was a bit unfortunate because there was only about 27 people there. Normally we have a half full or full town hall, but this meeting was for representatives of organisations to say what they'd done with grants from the town council. If you took out those people who had come to give a report, there was probably less than 6 people from the town in a general sense who weren't there to make a report. So they were all people who had been invited to come. And indeed what they said was very impressive because the organisations that are around the town doing good works and other interesting things is very impressive. And the community in Glastonbury, as you know,
contributes to many things. But I was a bit disturbed that this item didn't come forward tonight, and it was agreed at the last meeting that it should. And basically, I think that I've talked about the email, and I've talked about the wording of it. I didn't think it was properly done. I was unhappy that there seemed to be lobbying with the town clerk and an explanation about the town meeting that wasn't, in my view, strictly accurate. In fact, in many ways, it was made to mislead, so as that this item wouldn't go on the agenda. It's a matter of public knowledge. You can go and get the minutes of the last meeting and you'll see what it is. And I hope that at the next meeting, councillors who are here now or in the future will recognise the strategy that is there and this supposed battle between allotments and housing. The housing site is very appropriate for housing. It is built on the same levels as Kingsfield, just along the way, and which it may eventually be surrounded by housing lower down. Now, councillors will say the land's floods, but most of the land around Glastonbury floods. St Dunstan's Park was flooded land. Millstream Estate was flooded land. And that has all been dealt with by developers who raised the sites to keep them out of flooding. Kingsfield was flooded land. And there's always a complaint of flooded land. And at times they did flood, because over the years I've seen, for example, Millstream flooded. But that has been dealt with happily. So I think that my point in trying to say to councillors, we have strategies. You don't come in with a clean sheet. If you're re-elected, there are things coming over. The Towns Fund is one, and you'll hear about it later. And there are bigger things going on in Glastonbury than we've ever had before. The Towns Fund is huge for the town, and we'll need really good management to make sure that we get the monies that supposedly are going to come from the government, and indeed we hope that they will. But it's important that we carry on things that the council has a commitment to do. Okay, we didn't get a vote on it. That may have saved some people embarrassment because they wouldn't have to say what way they stood. But either way, it now is in the public domain. It's not going to have a vote, so it's not controversial in that sense. But new council members, and I'm disappointed. There are 28 people standing for election next month. 28. How many people are there in the audience? Not that many. Yeah. Good to see you. But isn't that a shame? The last meeting before a new council and the people standing for election in general haven't bothered to come to hear what the council does or take part in the meeting. It may show some commitment of the people who are coming in to want to represent you when they won't even turn up on the last meeting. So I think it's quite important that we remember this thing. We carry forward issues that, and this particular one, which I've read out, is one that's been on for a long time, since 1995, and it's one that I would hope will be taken up by the new council and we get on and deal with housing. There have been complaints tonight about the number of charges in the town. Some of those people may be looking for housing, some may not, but there are young families coming up who are having difficulty getting properties who could do with housing in the town. And this would be council housing as we know it, owned by the council with reasonable rents, because the land is ours, so there's not purchase land costs in the building of the houses, and therefore they could be done more easily and would be an opportunity for people in Glastonbury to get some decent housing. So I just hope that this will be carried forward and councillors will remember. On occasion, as Councillor Coles has said, he may come to council. I've done 40 years on this council, I've seen many things happen. And I think I'll probably turn up occasionally to try and hold the council to account over some of these issues that are being carried forward and which they must remember. So as part of my swan song, can I say that I'm disappointed about how this issue has been handled, and just that I will be back to remind people of what the council has as long-term commitments, not just next year, this year. This is since 1995, and we need to keep moving and getting proper housing for some other people in Glastonbury. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Just so that we don't have any further misinterpretations or misinformation, I'd just like to ask the clerk whether or not the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor
said that there was a debate at the meeting around the subject.
Your Worship, the words debate did not come from either the Mayor or the Deputy Mayor, it was from other people who attended the evening.
And to put the record straight, the reason why I was interested in whether or not this should go forward on the agenda is because of PERDA. It's the run-up to an election, and this was building into a controversial subject because there was a lot of people who were going to come to the council meeting to have something to say about it, and it just felt inappropriate at the time of PERDA for this to happen. The clerk sought advice on that from SALC, and that was what SALC agreed with. So just so that we can make sure that the record is correct. But Councillor Coles, Councillor Keary, I totally understand how you feel. So now we move on to the police report. It's a written report. Councillors will see that one of the items that came up around St John's Churchyard in public participation is mentioned in the third bullet of the police report. I wonder whether the clerk would be happy to read out that bullet for the benefit of the public here, as it was something that was mentioned during public participation.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report written by PC Karen Upshaw, and you're referring to the third bullet out of 6 or 7, and this one I will read. It says, antisocial behaviour has been on the increase around St John's Churchyard. Ahead of the summer, the beat team are working closely with the church in order to assist them with their new banning letters for people who continually cause problems. These will be used as warnings prior to other interventions under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014, such as acceptable behaviour contracts, community protection notices, criminal proceedings where evidence exists, and other civil or criminal orders.
Thank you very much. Councillors, is there anything else you wish to raise or comment on in relation to the police report? So we'll go Councillor McDougall.
So I noticed in the newsletter they sent out that there are opportunities for the public to meet police in Street and in Wells, but apparently not here.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like the council to explore?
I just would like to point that out, and why are we not having an opportunity to meet the police here?
Well, thank you. I wonder whether the clerk would be happy to inquire about that. Councillor Cottle, is this a response to Councillor McDougall's? No. So, Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, can I, a bit of clarification, talking to a long-standing resident of Glastonbury, clarification on who actually owns the churchyard. Is it actually the church, the diocese? Is it town council? Is it the town council maintain it? Could I have any clarification at all? I was led to believe it is solely the church property and it's their remit.
So thank you. Councillors, I'm asking for a response to that if you know it.
As far as I understand, it's Mendip District Council, having spoken to David McGill.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I'm glad to see this on the police report. It's a shame the police aren't here, because I was going to bring this up in my district council report. I'd just like to remind the council that we received money from the government not that long ago to enhance the high street, and I think, you know, this is a complete opposite to what we need in the high street with regard to the way we want it to look, and it has got out of hand. It has got worse over the past few months, and I'm glad to see that something's being put in place to tackle it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cottle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'd like to speak about this. Two things, actually. First one is where with the graveyard, the cemetery came up. Yes, Mendip are responsible for closed cemeteries, but they're not responsible for who locks the gate. Okay, so I think that is quite something to, there's a big difference there. Mendip are not responsible for the locking of the gate. So I'd just like to make that clear. The other thing that I would like to bring up is about the chalking and the general artwork that we have within the town. Whether it is to all of our taste or not is not really the question. I think that we should be looking in the future to manage this and to find a suitable compromise somewhere within the town that will keep the street artists happy of all types. I'm talking mime artists as well or whatever, and move forward on that basis, because it is unacceptable how it is at the moment in ways. So, but there has to be a compromise and there has to be a way forward so that we keep everybody happy, because there's a young lady there who seems to be talking on a regular basis, and some of her stuff is quite acceptable. And there are other artists as well within the town who would like to be able to exhibit their stuff to the people. But it needs to be done in a managed way in a certain area and go forward from there, not just anywhere where somebody feels like, I'm afraid. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lund?
Thank you, Worship. Can I just apologise for being late this evening. I've been in hospital. I've got minor concussion after meeting with a scaffold pole during my electioneering on Sunday.
Oh, that's the bump.
I hope I'll be able to stand up and keep standing up, that's the point.
Well, Councillor, if you wish to sit down, you can.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll carry on for the moment though. But liaison with the police has been a little bit strange this year. We normally have, or we have had previously, regular monthly discussions with one or two senior police officers, and that seems to, as we all know, has been put on hold for the time being, when obviously we're experiencing more and more problems, and it would be an advantage that the councillors were fully informed and up to date on a more regular basis. And of course, antisocial behaviour in the high street does affect the whole town. It particularly affects the tourism, the visitors that come. I've heard lots of reports from traders who say that their customers say that they won't be coming back again, which is very disappointing to hear. And of course, it affects residents as well as the traders themselves. And those of you that have been here before in the public gallery and have heard me speak about antisocial behaviour, it seems that I've been talking about this subject ever since, and in fact even before, we were all elected in 2019. It still is an ongoing issue, and clearly it's getting worse. Despite the fact that some people say to me, Paul, it's not getting worse, it's your perception of it getting worse. Here it is, in black and white, police are saying it's getting worse. So we really do need a strategy for this in the new council, and I look forward to supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keary.
Thank you, Worship. Just to mention point 4 about the police working in partnership with the National Trust and Tall Farmers. If any of you as councillors or even members of the public have not been up to see the work that's been done at the foot of the Tor to stop the parking that was taking place by camper vans and parking down the streets to block the road, then can I say it to Councillor Lation, what a good job the county have done in ensuring that we reduce that road to single lane, and that it now lines in very well with the other roads around the Tor. And hopefully that will sort out the problems that people had up there over many years. And she has worked particularly hard with Councillor Napper to get that work done. So I think thanks on that, but we also, it could be a good thing because maybe it will increase the use of the Tor bus, which is something that we subsidise as a council, and if we get the Tor bus used a bit more, then we won't have to subsidise it so much, hopefully. And also, it'll be good for the health of the nation because people will have to walk up the Tor if they want to go. Yeah. And a walk from the centre of town to the top of the Tor would do many of us a lot of good in terms of exercise and fresh air. So I think it's been a great job all round.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you. Some of us need to have the mobility organisation in town, again, that we had in the past to help us get up there. I would like to raise interest in the first bullet point on the police report, which is that 2 different policemen
PCO Hefferman and PCO Mel Rowlands are continuing to hold the weekly mini police sessions in St Ben's School. And I'd like to, for the information of councillors who may have forgotten and any potential councillors, to say that this was started with the help of a grant from the Youth Provision Committee Small Grants Fund, that although normally we have supported, and our role is to support the voluntary sector, that this project, which has been going now for 3 years nearly, is actually to help counteract and support children who might be vulnerable to county lines. And so it's a very specific and a very special aspect of work that's happening with a partnership between the police and St Benedict's. And I would really like to offer my gratitude to the police and to the school for trying to keep this going all through COVID and for supporting the young people affected. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So I think we shall now note the police report and move on to item 7. It almost feels as if we've been here before. So planning committee recommendations and property and assets recommendations. I look to Deputy Chair of Planning and Chair of Property and Assets if they wish to comment further on these, or we can note them.
Proposed property and assets have been noted, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Likewise propose that planning be noted.
Thank you very much, councillors. So we now move on to receive County Council reports, and we have a written report from Councillor Napper, and it is a great shame that Councillor Napper isn't here tonight, as it will be the last meeting that we will have with him as our county councillor. He's not standing for Glastonbury in the coming county elections. Councillors, we've got the written report here. If there are any comment or anything that councillors wish to say to Councillor Napper's written report. Councillor Lund.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Councillor Napper said with the town council.
Oh yes, but he's not standing as a county councillor.
Not as a county, but
yeah.
He will be here again, perhaps.
Oh, he may be here again, perhaps in a different hat, of course. One that he may have worn before. So, any other observations? I'm delighted to say that Councillor Leishan is here with us. Councillor Leishan, would you be happy to give us your report?
My apologies for not producing a written report. As many of you know, it's a busy time. I'm reporting partly with a county council and partly with the district council hat on, so forgive me whether they overlap. There was an open morning at Tor Leisure last Saturday, which I may have seen some of you. It was 4 hours, and we had about 100 people come through. We had 4 large posters showing the area of the land, the same as we had at the February open day in the town hall. But then we had the phasing of the project there. So phase 1 is the building. Phase 2 is work on the actual playing fields, so cricket nets, football. We also had the scope of the project, so it is a considerably reduced project for the building, mainly because of the increase in building costs, which are now affecting plenty of the town fund projects. So we're all aware of that, those of us who are working on projects. And then we also had the programme. So I'm quite happy, if it would be acceptable, to send copies of those posters to Gerard the clerk, who could forward them to all of you. I know they're going on the Tor Leisure website and also on the Town Deal website, but very happy to send those so that you see them firsthand. Last week we'd had the first draft of the playing pitch needs assessment for Tor Leisure that has been completed by Stuart Todd, who's a very experienced and actually very impressive planning consultant, particularly on sport. and that was fed in to the open morning on Saturday. It shows that there is a need for a 3G pitch in the Mendip area, a full-scale one, but that there are not, but A, there's one in street already at Strode College, and B, that there are not enough clubs playing football in street currently to warrant a 3G full-size pitch going at Tor Leisure. There are also many objections from residents, which you will already be aware of. There are issues about drainage, but there are still plans that there be recreational football on grass at Tor Leisure, as well as cricket, and as well as the different sports and clubs using the building, which will be part rebuilt and part refurbished. So there, we're waiting for the architect's drawings on exactly what they can do with the building as it exists, how much of it would be knocked down and rebuilt. They've done the structural survey, they've done the topographical survey, and some point in May we will get the drawings, and we will then organise another open morning at Tor Leisure for people to come and see those drawings. So it was a happy session, I would say, in some of the comments we received here at the opening. So on the subject of the multi-agency group most recent update that came out on the 1st of April, although it was certainly no April Fools, I'm not sure whether all councillors have seen that and seen the extent of the update. So it covered the work at Stonedown, already referenced, the work to be done at Bretonneau Road, where Councillor Napper and I had a meeting with officers at County, and those officers put forward the revised plan that does not include the one-way system, does include some double yellow lines in Bretonneau Road and the walking and cycling track all along the straight part of the road, but it doesn't affect where Chalice Way joins Cinnamon Lane. So it's a simplified plan. There's a temporary clearway from the 14th of April. I do note that some of the caravans have already moved back to Peccary, where they're on the cycle path again. There are also, there was an update in that MAG statement about the traveller sites for both permanent and transit, and the move towards a planning application. So that will be interesting. It's costing considerable money, partly from the Enabling Fund, partly from Homes England. So there is real movement there. And if I'm pleased about one thing in that update, it probably is that we've finally got that moving. I think the move to unitary authority has really helped there. Instead of one council talking about buying land off another council, which is ridiculous, they're now working together. I'll follow up on the replacement for Elim workers to support homeless people. I know as part of the work and as part of response that the MAG group are making to some residents who've come back with yet more questions, that there is a health outreach worker has been appointed at Mendip. There was a specialist housing officer for Glastonbury working with the roadside community. Rich, he left, and so now the most recent piece of recruitment is a health outreach worker. So when that person's in post, and I have a name, I'll get that to you. I'll be at Mendip, of course, until 2023, so you will still see me. I may or may not still have the portfolio that includes property, so I hope I'll still be talking to you, because I'm not finished on my ambition for Glastonbury before I finish representing Glastonbury in any way. And I hope that I'll be able to stay on the Town Fund Board as well, certainly for my time at Mendip, possibly even beyond that, representing community and heritage. So I would like to thank you all again for making me so welcome here in the chamber. And I want to congratulate those councillors who have, I don't know how many years service between them, but it would exceed considerably 100 years of service with them. Yeah. Quite remarkable. And those councillors have been both welcoming and supportive to me. and I've learnt a huge amount from them. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Wait for any questions in case you want to give me one last grilling.
So, questions, Councillor Coles, then Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Worship. Liz, you're probably aware there's been double yellow lines put in Wells Road on the right-hand side going out of Glastonbury. As you know, I've been nagging you for 3 years about outside St Dunstan's school, just past the school, and by that junction of Austin Road. Why weren't those lines put there when they put them across the road?
The ones that you're talking about were done as part of the residents' parking, which still doesn't seem to be finished, so I'll have to follow up on that too. All the others are on the list, and the list from Aileen Fletcher, that those were accepted. So it is just, my understanding is it's a matter of as soon as the contractor does them. So we did have a list from Aileen that came back. I'm not sure whether Gerard has that list as well, but there was a list where she ticked the boxes of the ones that were acceptable.
You know the error I'm referring to, don't you?
Yeah. Really sad that that didn't make the 2018 list. If I'd had that as soon as I was elected, I could have got that on the list for 2018. But they do only do a list once a year now, and it is on the list, and it is. I'll keep trying.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for your report. I'm just very disappointed that it looks like there's going to be a repeat problem in the Beckery with encampments. And also, it just makes me wonder who's responsible for the strategy of the MAG decisions, because it seems that 6 to 8 weeks ago, Bresney Road was completely clear. Beckery was evicted, Bretany Road became a problem again. Now it seems that Beckery Road hasn't been closed, the end of Beckery Road hasn't been closed, so there's going to be a problem again, so-called there. Furthermore, the introduction of double yellow lines on one side of Bretany Road always to me seemed to be a good idea, and I wonder why it hasn't been done before on both sides of the road without the necessity for this great expense of a cycle path from nowhere to nowhere. So all in all, the cost of the evictions and the cost of the cycle path seems to me an immense waste of public money when there could have been a much cheaper solution to the problem, which we all know is to do with homelessness as much as Glastonbury being flooded with travellers from outside areas, often pointed towards Glastonbury by other authorities such as Western-super-Mare and Bristol. It's just all in all disappointing use of public money when we could have had double yellow lines in the first place many years ago. That's all.
I can answer that, Your Worship, the same as I have answered it in writing to one of the residents on Redlands. The reason we were not able to get a traffic regulation order for double yellow lines on Bretany Road, both sides, was because the road was so wide that there was no possibility of obstruction of the road. Put in a cycling and walking path, you make the road less than 2/3 of its current width, and you then have potential for obstruction. So then you can put in a TRO for double yellow lines. So I put to the resident I wrote to this morning that actually what it looks like from where I stand is a win-win. You get cycling and walking. They've allowed a cyclist refuge in the middle of the road as you turn into Bretany Road from Buckley Road. They've allowed drop curbs where there's access across for the right of way. They've allowed drop curbs where the sewage pumping station is, because they may need access to that at any time. So all the things that I asked for are in there. By narrowing the road, we now can propose a TRO for double yellow line. That's the difference. So it's just how it's worked. I completely agreed with those residents who didn't want the one-way system. I thought it was heavy-handed, expensive, and nobody had thought about the thing that was mentioned to me afterwards, which was the farmer needing to access the field at the far end, having to drive all the way around the estate. So this is now the final proposal. It will not get changed again. There is a link on the MAG statement if anybody wishes to either complain, comment or compliment the council, and I would guess we'll probably get some of all three.
Right,
Thank you for
replies.
that reply. Could you reply to the second part of the question, which was why wasn't Beckery closed before, because the travellers had to move back there, and why wasn't Bresnu Road closed concurrently at the same time when the evictions took place in the Beckery and Brights, because it was obvious that everybody was going to turn up there.
Yes, and it's obvious that everybody needs a place on the earth, and we haven't yet got a traveller site, so until we've got traveller sites, permanent and transit, there is a policy of cyclical evictions, it's called, and it will continue.
So would you admit, therefore, that MAG is responsible for the further encampments of Bresnu Road? Because I'd like that to be made clear to the residents.
That way. The policy is, at the moment, cyclical evictions in Glastonbury. What happens when you do a cyclical eviction, you can see for yourselves. And so that is the policy at the moment of those who are working on the multi-agency group. So that's county, district, town council's got its name on the MAG group list as well, and the police.
Well, thank you.
It is, I understand, Your Worship, that it is unwelcome, it is not satisfactory, but we also have to understand that when there is provision, as I hope there will be, for traveller sites, it will be proportionate to the size of the town, not proportionate to the need. Because if it were proportionate to the need, we could be looking for places for 2,000 vans very soon with the price of housing as it is and homelessness as it is. But Glastonbury, stroke Mendip, stroke Somerset cannot possibly hope to accommodate, either in terms of land or in terms of finance, all those people who are going to need some kind of alternative accommodation. Because I'm totally in agreement with those who say we have a housing crisis in this country. We do.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bishop.
First of all, thanks again for all your hard work. I've worked over the last year closely with the Redlands Group and the Redlands Group Association, and obviously I've had a lot of contact with them. They're very, very pleased with the two-way system, and they're very, very grateful that their concerns were taken on board. Okay, so as one resident said, we'll believe it when it happens, and I've reassured them, as this has reassured them, it will be happening, and it is happening. Okay, and also the works around the tour, which I've been up around, is very good. It's all the start. It's a way forward. It's going to be a long process, but I am very, very pleased with your work, Terry's work, and everybody else that's been involved to try and get this far. Thank you.
I can add, Your Worship, my real concerns about something that I see bordering on organised crime in this town, which is people buying derelict caravans. If you have a look in the local paper, I'm not sure if it was in last week, there's an advert in the local paper, one or two every week, caravans purchased, condition unimportant. And so I followed one through street the other day. We pulled over actually so that we could follow it, and my partner and I, we followed it, filming it on the dash cam that I had to purchase because I got so much harassment around the back of the tour from people in motorhomes there. And I presented all of that evidence of the person who was towing that caravan illegally, of course, no lights, no number plate, no nothing, in a white transit van, which is taxed and MOT'd. And so we followed it. It was dropped off on the road to Boltonsborough. So we turned around, came back, person waved us on, got lovely pictures. We know exactly who's doing it. I've sent it all to the police. They have confirmed that as evidence it is satisfactory and they can see perfectly well number plates of the van doing the towing. I have presented all that evidence because my understanding is that you buy the caravan from that person or people. It's then put on the road somewhere in or around Glastonbury. You pay 50, 80, £100. If you don't pay, it gets torched. And some of the people here this evening may know of a tragic accident down on Kennard Moor Drove not that long ago. And I spoke to a young person at the county council one day who was talking to his social worker, and I overheard him, and he'd had his caravan torched, and he was quite happy to tell me why that had happened. And he was going to come back and buy another one. I pleaded with him to take the accommodation that his social worker was offering him, because I knew if he came back in another caravan and again didn't pay, that not only was his caravan at risk, but so was his life and health. So there are really, really dark influences in this town, and I think some of the councillors may have had the tour of Kennard Moor Drove, may have heard some of those concerns, and we must not turn our heads and look away. We must not.
Thank you. Councillor Lund.
I'm pleased that Councillor Bishop has been active in St Mary's ward. It's not a ward, but it's great to know that you're active there as well.
I have been active in Benedict ward as well.
A number of residents are clearly were unsatisfied about the two-way, the one-way route as you described. So I just wanted to thank you for listening to them and my appeal, which I put to all the councillors, that we needed to show our resilience, if you like, to this idea of a one-way system if it was going to be put in place. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for all the work that you've done for us. And I'm sorry that you are leaving perhaps for another parish, but if you are, then all the best and very good luck.
Hear, hear.
Your Worship, I would happily have stood for Glastonbury Street again. It's
Thank
not
you.
my choice.
Well, Councillor Tucker.
So, Your Worship, I'd just also like to thank Liz for the work she's done on behalf of the town. And I think we should also write to Terry, because he's not here. And I think that the thing that I found most impressive is that although they are both of different parties, they've actually worked together for the benefit of the town. Whilst I know that they have political differences, and sometimes that can get quite heated, it has been a pleasure to watch them work together to make things happen in the town, and the difference has been tremendous, because we've heard of the things that have actually, by Liz's diligence and Terry's political manoeuvrings between them, by working together, they've actually achieved so much more for the town than people who just stand back and throw political snowballs at each other. And I think it's a credit to the pair of them, and I think that we should note it, and I would hope that this town council would write to both and just thank them for the dedication and the amount of work that's been done in the last 4 or 5 years has been tremendous, and it's a credit to the pair of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Tucker, I hear the words formal vote of thanks in your words. Something I would like to say that I'm sure all of the council would join Councillor Tucker in proposing that formal vote of thanks to both you, Liz, and Terry, and hear to everything that Ian has said. Thank you. So we will definitely write to both of you with a formal vote of thanks from this council. Can I just, for the record, have a show of hands of all those in favour? I'm sure the clerk can see that that's carried unanimously, and thank you. I am absolutely delighted in a way that you're not standing in Glastonbury, because you are a councillor that I would vote for, Councillor Lyshan, but I wouldn't be able to, as I'd be standing against you. So thank you so much for all you've done, and I think that deserves a round of applause for both Terry and So, councillors, we now move on to receive the district councillor reports. I would like to ask Councillor McDougall if she'd got anything to add to your excellent written report.
I'd just like to make a comment about housing. The good news is that when it comes to unitary, we will be able to revive a council house building programme because Somerset West and Taunton has a housing account and is able to build. But houses in the right place, not on the floodplain. Glastonbury is constrained and we shouldn't be building on inappropriate land. I just want to highlight a couple of things because it disappears into the onto the website. Nobody really seems to be aware of all the effort that I put into these reports, so I'm going to highlight it this time. We've got a little bit of time. I don't know why this time round, but we seem to have got through things. Planning board. The telecoms mast and froom was turned down by a narrow majority for health reasons, observing the precautionary principle, because where research has been shown to be out of date and of poor quality. At the Somerset Climate Action Network session on Zoom on home insulation, I was interested to hear that, and this is a national figure, it was observed that we need 2,300 retrofits done every day until 2050 in order to go net zero. So that is some task which we need to speed up on. At a Rivers Trust conference, it was pointed out to me that Wessex Water is one of 5 companies nationally that have been handed notices for a discharge. So there's some work to be done locally on, as we know, on the phosphates. That was pointed out. Somerset Bus Partnership that I attend from time to time. It's a campaigning group. Somerset remains at the bottom of the league for satisfaction in the country for buses. So hopefully when we get to unitary, something may be done about that. Public transport is essential if we to address our carbon emissions in this county. I'd just like to highlight that Glastonbury Community Development Trust would like further volunteers in order to resume their daily service. They're looking for more volunteers in order to get back on their feet after the pandemic. And Avalon Community Energy Community Benefit Fund are offering pre-curtains and carpets to the value of £300 for those on benefits or otherwise considered vulnerable. You can apply to Avalon Community Energy for this. The LC WHIP, which is about footpaths and cycling at Mendip, is to be announcing the results of its initial surveys next month. So that will be interesting to see what they comment about recommendations for cycling and walking town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before questions for Councillor, as it's been mentioned, I think it is prudent to say that I'm a director of Avalon Community Energy. Councillor Lund.
Thank you, President Doodle. On the buses issue, it's rather pertinent because today, whilst on the bus back from Bristol, the bus driver was talking about a number of passengers being very annoyed the bus didn't stop outside a particular area close by to Glastonbury, I think it was, because of roadworks. The bus drivers don't seem to be told when True Speed and all the other roadworks that we've seen in Glastonbury and the street in Wells are taking place. Now, this may be the fault of First Bus management, but I would like to know who it is that, from whether it's the county council, which I presume, or whether it's the district council, that inform the public transport system when there are roadworks and impress upon them, well, can't impress upon them, but hope that they will pass that on to those relevant drivers so that passengers are informed when the bus doesn't stop, when they press the bell, because of the roadworks, and they would stop on the road. So maybe between you might want to look into that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bunn.
Thank you. My question really is around planning, and I would like to make a comment that I am really pleased that precautionary principle lack of research was used for Froome. But I'd also like to ask a different question, and I don't know whether you would know this, Councillor Madood, or whether it might be somebody else, which is I'm aware of at least 2 households in this town who, due to current price rises, lack of sufficient incoming funds, which haven't risen in balance, are going to be having to give up their homes and put them on the market, and hoping to acquire smaller properties, some on land that might be available through their families. Whether there has been any national guidance from the government about planning to do with building much smaller buildings on smaller places of land, because that's what both these families wish to do, and both of them are active in our community. Children go to local schools, and it is a concern. If already there's 2 households in this position, then and we're only just at the beginning of this financial squeeze, to me, I think we're just seeing the very tip of a rather big iceberg.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall.
So I kind of hesitate to say this because it does cause problems, but it is the answer from central government is that they have upped the number of houses that we're expected to build each year considerably, which means that there's much more freedom as to where you can build. Within planning law, you can build outside the development. So that is the central government's response to the lack of housing, is to allow more building to take place. I mean, the concern obviously is that the more building isn't for smaller houses necessarily, if it's done on the open market. I mean, I looked at Upping Farm just on the its election time and looking around at that's how I ended up there. I was comparing it to Kingsfield, actually, where I was leafleting. And Uppingstock Farm is on the private market, and they had about sort of 5 small houses that the sales lady said could have been sold 10 times over. Not nearly enough small houses. And the remaining houses, of which I would say the majority are 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses, some of which have not yet been reserved. There isn't a requirement for these houses. They're clearly being built to benefit the developers, not to satisfy a housing need. So that's my response, that the central government are providing more housing to be built, but it's not the right housing.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keary.
Thank you, Richard. What you've said highlights exactly the need of council housing to be built by this council. Smaller units, so that the very people that you said couldn't get units at a Bastock Farm need to be done. But you used the word appropriate land. If we used the word appropriate land 20 years ago, there would be no Millstream Estate, there would be no St Dunstan's, there would be no Kingsfield. And they have been raised, and there's going to be housing below our allotments, as you know, planning coming in, and that will be made on land that is not appropriate. The developers raise the land to get at the floodplain, and people live in those houses very happily. If those houses get flooded, St Dunstan's, Millstream, Kingsfield, we have a national emergency. It won't be Glastonbury worrying about things, because the land between Weston-super-Mare and everywhere else will be flooded. And it will be a national emergency, and there will be people, refugees from those houses with nowhere to go. So if we need to be talking about housing at smaller units, you've made my point completely, and I hope the council will remember that in the future than when you start talking about appropriateness and floodplain and all the rest. It needs to be done.
Thank you. Councillor Madu?
I did look at Kingsfield, and I met a few people on Kingsfield, and there are a lot of young people there. It's young people who need it. The two people that I spoke to, one came from Street and one came from Woodley Hole. So they're not necessarily catering for people in Glastonbury. So what I say about Unitary providing the solution, social housing will be able to be built, council houses, proper council houses, not housing association, in our area. People may not be able to stay here because we are constrained in Glastonbury where we can build. We're surrounded by a floodplain, so they may not be able to stay here. They may have to move elsewhere, as clearly these people from Woodley Hole and Street have not been able to stay exactly where they come from, but there will be council housing built if the right people get into Unitary.
Just to come back,
Right to reply.
The council housing I'm talking about will be built by Glastonbury Town Council, and the allocation can be to Glastonbury people. So we needn't necessarily have people coming in from outside. We could actually deal with Glastonian families who need housing in proper units. So let's not talk about allocation on this county basis that can people from Street or anywhere else. We as a council could do that allocation.
Thank you. So, thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Henderson, have you a report?
Yeah, nothing to report from the District Council this month, Your Worship. So,
thank you. Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm a little bit the same as Steve here. It's been a quiet month in regard to meetings, really. In fact, I have one lined up for today, and that was cancelled, but I believe Councillor McDougall was supposed to attend as well. And it's just the way the things are. But there are a few things I would like to highlight. Actually, this is the last of the 4 years or 3 years that we've done. When with Councillor McDougall talking about the planning, I think there's definitely something there. But what we've got to remember is every house that's built has got to jump through the planning approval process anyway. There's no easy stuff, and I also think that we have to be careful what we wish for. Yes, we would like more housing, but where is our firm ground located? Wick and Old Wells Road, and possibly other few areas. If we're not very careful, those protected landscapes will be built on at some stage. So we have to be very careful with what we're doing. Because also with upping stock, as you rightly pointed out, that is creeping already onto the beginning of Wick Lane or Brindham Lane at that end, and hasn't pleased a lot of people, including, believe it or not, the daughter of the farmer who sowed the land. And but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. So we're going to have to watch this. And like you said, the government are asking us to build houses everywhere, and are not specifying that they should be of affordable or social housing. Whereas really the answer to our situation as a nation, if you want to take it that far, is that we must have old-fashioned council estates where people have proper lifetime tenancies, so that they take a pride in the estate and they take a pride in their houses, and they invest their own money into these houses. When you're on 3 years or a 5-year tenancy or something like that, you're not going to plant a decent garden or anything like that, because you might be doing it for the next person. You might be kicked out. So there's a lot in the housing sector that needs to be sorted. It's not a quick fix, and I think we're on the same page, sort of thing there, roughly, of how that works. So that's something. Also, I've noticed in the last month, just over, that my work is generally, where I visit houses, is taking much, much longer. People are interested in what's going on locally before they make their decisions on where they'll put their cross on that particular day. And some of the conversations I've had have been most enlightening, actually, some of them, and how people think and whatever. I think we're living in strange times, and I think it's affecting some of the people as well, to be quite truthful with you. So we'll have to see go that. But one of the big things that was highlighted to me, this is no disrespect to the county council, because I'm very happy with what's gone around the tour, is that there is room in part of the building there for tents. And this was a local resident at the tour who pointed out to me, he said, I can see them when that's settled down and grown up, there'll be tents all along here. And so I think maybe we're going to need to do a little bit more work on top of there, on the lawns, the top piece, if we're to keep it clear, because I think he had a very good point. And I think that's something we will have to remember. And for the next town council, there's going to be a lot of work to do, whoever gets elected and whoever doesn't get elected. And finally, I'd like to say what a pleasure it's been to work with Councillor Tucker, Councillor Keary and Councillor Coles over all these years. I was elected at the same time as Councillor Coles, but both of us are junior in comparison to these two, who've been here forever. So I think it's good. I think it's really good, and I've enjoyed working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any questions for Councillor? Councillor
Thank you very much. Just to come back on the planning issue, I think Lindsay was saying that with the unitary we can now build in other places apart from Glastonbury. That was the point she was making.
But that one.
But I would say that with any planning application that comes in, especially for a big development, it's down to the LPA to make a decision on that application, which starts as we as a consultee could make a decision on any application that came in and said, well, no, we don't want these big houses, we want smaller houses. So it starts here, which the new council should take on board. But also, whether it's Mendip Council over the next year or the Unitary Council, whatever body however that planning authority looks like, they need to have the guts to say, we don't need 4, 5, 6 bedroom houses, we want 2 up, 2 down, or whatever to suit the local needs. So I think that's something that they're going to have to learn to take on board.
Thank you, Councillor. I would follow that up by saying that our neighbourhood plan has a housing needs assessment within it, which is robust and demonstrates the type of homes required in Glastonbury for the local people. Once the neighbourhood plan becomes approved through referendum, then that will be part of the planning considerations for whatever authority is there once Mendip disappears up its own existence. So my own council report is that I attended standards meeting on March 15th, which was one that I was with Councillor Cottle, and I also on April the 11th attended the Axe and Brew Internal Drainage Board meeting, as I am a council representative on that board. And it's going to be an interesting time for Mendip as we move into the next year with the changeovers that are going to occur. But I feel that it is to the merit of this council that we will continue to have the current district councillors. I'm not just saying, apart from myself maybe, but merit to the council for the other 3 district councillors who represent Glastonbury still being members of that authority until it goes. There is a continuity in that, which I think is really useful at this time. Thank you. We move on to receive the budget monitoring report. Councillors, this is in your papers. I am personally delighted to see note 21, as it's part of an ongoing stuck record that I have had around why do we get charged council tax as an authority when we're raising the funds to pay it from council tax. Any other comments?
Yes, Your Worship, just noting the takings on the car park, which is happily ahead of budget, and to ask the town clerk really, have any more information on the transfer of the car park, which we are linking with the Pomparlas Bridge land, as you are all aware, and whether this has yet been finalised, or he thinks it may be finalised soon from Mendip District Council, because that is an important asset that we need to get fully for the town, so that we can take our own controls, make our own controls if necessary on the park.
Thank you.
Worship, thank you. It was equally pleasing to see that we're nearly £5,000 over our predicted budget for the income from the car park, and that's a reflection, I guess, on the increased capacity of people coming to Glastonbury post-COVID. But the direct question was, have I had any more correspondence with regards to the asset transfer of that piece of land? And Councillor Keary has been kept abreast of everything that I have so far been made aware of, but I will chase it again tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other comments on this budget monitoring report? Councillors, I'm sure you'll join me in thanking the responsible finance officer for providing us with such an excellent set of notes to this report, which makes it much easier to understand what's going on. I would like that to be minuted if the clerk would be happy. Councillors, we also seem to be in a period of time which has been extremely difficult and challenging financially for all organisations. I think that we can safely say that with the prudent work that the clerk and responsible finance officer have done over the year, we're not in too bad a shape, and possibly we're thankful that we're not in worse shape, as I'm sure some other councils are. So thank you very much to the clerk and to the responsible finance officer. Councillors, we now turn our attention to schedule of payments. Also with your papers, any comments to these? Councillors, do I have your agreement to sign these off? I will suffice. Thank you. Councillor, I do so. We will receive a recommendation from the responsible finance officer to extend the Zurich insurance cover for 3 years. I wonder, Gerard, whether you would like to speak to this, or whether it's just something that councillors could make a decision on without any further.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to bring to your attention, this was circulated with the agenda, so you've had a sight of this for a week or so. And to mention, it is clearly not a fait accompli. There is an opportunity here if we wish to change our insurance provider. But Zurich have supported us well in the past. They've never let us down, and you'll see that the quote for 3 years is slightly lower than the quote we've had for the 1 year until now. So the recommendation of the responsible financial officer and the clerk's office is that we accept the Zurich insurance 3 years insurance quote.
Councillor, I'm looking for, is this a question? Councillor McDougall.
So, with any financial organisation that we get involved with, surely the question is, have they got any interests in the fossil fuel industry?
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
I was wondering whether the 6,373 is frozen within 3 years. So, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett. Councillors.
I would like to propose that we accept this because it's actually giving us a saving of nearly £700 a year if we agree to the 3-year agreement with the extension option.
I'd like to second that, Your Worship.
So, sorry, councillors, are you wishing to speak to this against the motion?
Well, I just wonder whether you ought to do due diligence as to whether they have involvement in the fossil fuel industry. Surely we can't carry on business as usual with any financial organisation. We need to check every single time.
Thank you very much. Councillor, I totally hear and understand what you're saying, and I feel that that would be something for the new council to consider early in its existence, perhaps, and perhaps we can minute that. At this moment in time, we're being asked to come up with an acceptance or not of this insurance, which is before us. We have a proposal and a seconder to accept this. So are you wishing to put forward a separate proposal that we don't accept it?
Well, I'm just looking at the date. We've got until March. When does it run out? I'm just trying to make out the list. It's kind of expired.
It's already
valid.
Well, it says the 3-year agreement taken out in 2019 is expired.
So,
Well, it's a bit late then, isn't it?
So, Councillor, Councillor Keary.
Well, just to say, Your Worship, that I would support the proposal, but perhaps we could write to Zurich and say that the council are concerned that they may be investing in fossil fuel development or otherwise, and would say that would they please take this into account, and perhaps in reviewing what investments they have, realise that this is a growing issue and that perhaps they need to take it into account.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henderson.
It does just say that there is continuous insurance cover whilst the town council agrees on this option.
Thank you, Councillor Mutch.
This reminds me of a collection of financial investments. I did write to Somerset County Council after the demonstration outside the town hall that Your Worship was involved in against investments in fossil fuel industries by public bodies. And the reply that I got from them was quite astonishing. They effectively said, if I remember correctly, that there is no moral dimension to how they invest the money. We're talking about investments in the interests of pension funds, and certainly the investments in fossil fuels were not considered to conflict with any kind of protocols that they were obliged to observe. They were quite honest about it, but I was shocked by the bluntness of their response. And I think that perhaps this council should pursue the Somerset County Council to rethink their policy on that. It might be something that goes on all over the country. I wouldn't be at all surprised. It's amazing who you find has got money in all kinds of things.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure it's not the first time any of us have been amazed by the County Council. Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I agree, by the way. But what I'd like to say is that, I think what Councillor McDougall's come up with is something that really hadn't passed my mind, but it has now. And I think for the future, definitely, we'll have to be wary of this, because I was one of the first people at Mendip who highlighted the tobacco industry. And then we went on to another, the people who persecute, the countries that persecute, and investing our money on and having anything to do with these countries. So I see that in the future, definitely, Lindsay, but if maybe not at this time, but that it is something that has to be moved forward. If elected to the unitary, I will take it there for you.
So, thank you, Councillor Cottle. Councillor Keary has proposed that we write a letter to the insurance company. I'm looking for a seconder.
I'll second that.
So, a sea of hands. So, Councillor Barnett was the only one who spoke. So I'm going to accept her.
I've learned from my
anyone? Very good learning. Anyone wish to speak against that motion? Show of hands, all those in favour. So thank you. Clark, if you'd be happy to write to Zurich asking whether or not they invest in fossil fuels. I think that this would need to be the new council reviewing its procurement procedures and adding into the procurement procedures something around how the businesses that we do business with operate in relation to fossil fuels, etc. So thank you, councillors. So now we come back to the actual motion that's before us. Councillor Barnett proposed, Councillor Coles, I believe, seconded the motion to accept the recommendation of the responsible financial officer. Does anyone wish to speak against that motion? Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour of that motion? Anybody against? Anybody wishing to abstain? So we have one abstention.
Noted.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we move forward now recommendation from the clerk's office that the next town council meeting is rescheduled for Tuesday, the 17th of May. I'd like to ask the clerk to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is reasoning for this, that I learnt that the count for the Town Council's election, which is to be held on May the 5th, will not take place until Saturday, May the 7th. So we won't know the outcome of the new council until most probably the Sunday or the Monday of that week. Now, if you recall, at the last time there was an election 3 years ago, the Tuesday following that election, we had an evening where all of the new councillors attended a discussion around the tables, getting to know you. And if you recall, I shared a pack of information which was provided a lot of detail on the assets, on the land we own and all sorts of things. And we used the opportunity to share with the council a lot of and it also gave an opportunity for people to think about the structure of the council and what committees they may wish to get involved with, rather than turning just up at the first meeting and then being given a fait accompli about what to do to spend their time and energies on. So our recommendation is that from the clerk's office that we change the meeting from the second Tuesday for this one period only to the third Tuesday. That is against your standing orders, and that's why it's on your agenda this evening for that discussion. And then it's a further suggestion that the planning meeting scheduled for the 17th of May is bumped forward by a week to the 24th of May. So that's the reasonings behind it, Your Worship, and I welcome the debate.
So, councillors, you've heard the clerk's office recommendation from the clerk. Anyone wish to speak to this? So, do I have a proposal to accept?
Yeah, I'll propose it.
Does anyone wish to second that? Councillor McDougall? All those in favour of moving the meeting to the 17th of May? Thank you.
Come along.
Councillor, anyone wish to vote against that motion? And any abstentions? I couldn't help but note that the most esteemed councillors in the room who are leaving us did not vote on this.
Won't make much difference. So where's the count to be taken? Is it the Bath and West? The local election count. Would that take place at the Bath and West?
I don't know. It is, but not from the county council. Yes, it is.
So, councillors, just for the due diligence of the record, may I put that you abstained from that vote? Councillor, thank you. So we now come to reports of the advisory committees. Glastonbury and Bloom had a meeting. Councillor Christine Pryor chaired the meeting very ably. It was great to see her at the meeting. There were plenty of things that we discussed around the future planning, etc., of what we will do in the coming year. And I couldn't help but think from the public participation section of the meeting that perhaps a council-inspired or led litter-picking process could be something that the In Bloom committee considered, as it would certainly help and support the In Bloom process. I've been asked to raise some points, 3 points in relation to the Fisher's Hill, the wreck in Fisher's Hill, which came up at the meeting but were unresolved, and that is the request for a 1,000 litre bonded water tank for storage to be situated in that site, because there is no mains water there at the moment, to reduce the cutting regime in line with biodiversity recommendations. And that is something that the council may wish to consider in relation to wildlife, particularly insects, in our cutting regime. And that might be a wider thing for the council to consider, the new council to consider when it meets for the first time. And also for the benches that are currently at Fisher's Hill to remain in situ. There is talk of moving these benches to other locations and replacing them with the new Glastonbury way benches. And so that is also a request that's come through from this committee. I think that in relation to these three things, as the advisory committee is only here for note and report at this point, that this is something that may come back to the In Bloom committee when it meets again, and then some recommendation may come to this council from that committee. Councillor McDougall.
Something I should have spoken about earlier, on the subject of benches, in the High Street, the benches that have been taken away outside the co-op have left some uneven pavement, and apparently people are tripping up on it. This is, I've asked about it, and it's our responsibility apparently to replace them, put them back. Otherwise we've got to resurface the pavement because it's actually dangerous.
Thank you. I wonder whether we could ask the clerk's office to explore whose responsibility those paving slabs are. If they are our responsibility, that's something that I'm imagining the new council will have to deal with PDQ. And in Purda, I'm not sure we'll be able to make any decision around an extra spend. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to remind you that the council did used to run a quarterly litter picking session, which seems to have petered out. So I think maybe the Bloom committee could perhaps reintroduce that when the new council's in place. So I think, although I admire what the lady who was at public participation had done, I think asking councillors to do it once a month might be pushing it, personally.
Thank you, Councillor Lund.
Definitely. The lower of the three benches that was situated in place is the one that you're looking at. And it's been drawn to my attention because there's partly tarmac and partly paving. But on one of the paving slabs, there is a sawn off bolt that still remains by about that much. And if anyone were to fall over onto it and hit their head, that would be quite serious. So it does need shaving down or that stone removing, but also there is an unevenness of the tarmac as well. So I think what Councillor McDougall is saying is that if you put the bench back, it would simply cover up the issue. Otherwise, you've got to replace all of that section. Is that right?
Thank you. Councillors, I draw your attention to the fact that we're listening to reports from advisory committees and we're talking about In Bloom at the moment. This is not In Bloom business. So although I'm quite happy for councillors to respond to this, I see two more councillors wish to speak to it. I do draw your attention to standing orders. Councillor Coles, Councillor Smythe.
I know we're talking about Glastonbury and Bloom, but the issue of the pavement, it's the responsibility of county highways.
Thank you, councillors. I don't know if you heard Councillor Coles said that he feels it's responsibility of county highways. Councillor Smythe.
As you remind us, this is Glastonbury and Bloom business. So what is the preference of the Glastonbury Bloom committee, that the benches are replaced by the Glastonbury Way benches, or that they are retained, the original, the ones that are there retained?
I'm not sure that there was a satisfactory resolution to the issue. Councillor Much and then Councillor Serena Ray-Dougal.
Thank you, Worship. Just with regard to the litter picking which came up just now, and it does put... Sorry? Am I out of turn?
No.
With regard to not wanting to put too much responsibility on local people who've done nothing wrong and haven't dropped the litter, I wonder what potential there might be to explore the use of the miscreants that have fallen foul of the legal system, who might well overlap with the same community of people that dropped the litter in the first place. Pure speculation on my part, to be herded around and got to pick up litter, not only in the town but out on the roads. All the places where I go walking with my dog, and you find cans and all manner of filth in the ditches along there. It's quite upsetting, really.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Just before we move forward, we are in danger of having the debate that I'm hoping will move forward to the In Bloom committee when it next meets at this meeting. So I'm just going to take one more councillor's input. Councillor Rowling Dougal.
Thank you. Yes, so my understanding from people who use Fisher's Hill Park is that they want the 2 benches that are there retained and to have more benches, that there actually are not sufficient benches, and that would answer Mike's point about the Glastonbury Bloom benches being put in, so that there would be actually 4 benches in total for people who use Fisher's Hill Park, but they would really like that. The other thing is, I don't know that we should kick the water thing into the long grass, because lots of plants have been planted and the new hedges have been planted, and these are going to need watering now, this year. Otherwise, we will lose all the plants that have been gone in and all those hours of work that have been put in to doing all the planting. And it's hundreds of plants that have been put in. So if this council, which I know from working with the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee, that we bring things forward to this council for this council to agree on, if this council could actually agree that we will provide the water container for Fisher's Hill for the watering over this next month that is going to be needed for those new young plants, I think it would be a really good idea.
So, Councillor, as I have mentioned the water storage tank in the report that I gave from the advisory committee, and it's been a subject of debate with a slight detour into the high street. If you are wishing to put a proposal forward, you are quite within your rights to do so.
I would like to propose that this council agrees on having the water storage tank provided for Fisher's Hill, so that the plants that have been planted over the winter can be watered so that they can stay alive.
Come back, please.
Thank you. The clerk wishes to speak to this before we move to a vote.
I'm recognising the will around this table for you to have a watering facility put in place, but I will ask you, please, to take caution on a number of points. One is the health and safety of whatever container you put in. It has to be up high to allow you to get the water from it. So you have to think about whatever it's going to be placed on has to be safe. The second is that if you have a capacity of water, you will have a concern about Legionnaire's disease, because you've got to make sure that nobody's going to drink it. So we have to give thought to that. And the third, Your Worship, would be that I would want to know from our insurance company that we would be covered in the event of there being a problem, should you choose to go down this route. Thank you.
So, Councillor, there's 3 points from the clerk there. I wonder whether, Serena, you would wish to change your motion in any way in response to the clerk?
I think that the knowledge of water butts at all allotments, which are public spaces, and nearly every hut has its own water butt for watering the plants, that this is nothing different from what we have on our allotments. And the council already, in terms of insurance with regard to water butts on allotments, it's not anything different. I don't really see that people will be drinking water from a water butt.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cottle?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. I was just thinking on this. I think the water butt idea is fine for now, but I think we should be looking to put and suggesting to be looked at in the future by the new council to lay a mains water in there with a water fountain and a tap for watering, and for the humans who use the area to be able to get a drink when they need one. I think you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone in the future with that one.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. So, Councillor McDougall?
Surely we can fairly easily put some security on a water tank so that people don't use it for inappropriate.
No, it doesn't work like that, Lindsay. Legionnaire's a bit different to that.
Well,
if it's locked, then people can't use it.
Thank you. Councillor Keary?
Just in the meantime, Your Worship, perhaps we could add that area to our watering regime with our tank going round the town until the detail of putting in a water butt is sorted out and how to do it appropriately. That would seem to be an immediate answer, which would service all well.
So thank you, Councillor Coles.
My late mother-in-law died from Legionnaires, so I should be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you. Councillors, we have a proposal and a seconder for the water butt to be obtained by the council, and we have also the suggestion that the area also be added to our current watering regime. So, councillors, Councillor Serena Ronnie-Dougal, you've put forward the motion. Are you happy for the motion to move forward? Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't see any problem with the water butt.
So, Councillor Keary, I noted you. Is your motion to revise the motion to make an alternative?
Because the issues raised by the town are going to be resolved, and in the meantime, we could cover the watering with using our current system, just added to the regime, and it would give time for the town clerk to sort that out and to this issue to come forward to the next council. So I propose that until the new council makes a decision about providing a water butt, that the Fisher's Hill area be added to the current watering regime to ensure that the plants that have been planted survive into the season.
So, councillors, I see that as an amendment to the motion. The motion would still be that perhaps in principle we would go for the water butt, but that until those issues raised by the clerk are resolved, that we would add it to the watering regime. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Thank you. So, anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillors, we now need to vote on whether or not the amendment goes forward to become the substantive motion. We're not voting on the motion, we're just voting as to whether or not it becomes the motion. So, is everyone clear? Councillors, can I have a show of hands of all those who would like to put the amendment forward as a substantive motion?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Your Worship.
Anyone who wishes to vote against the amendment? 2 councillors. So any abstentions? 1 abstention. Councillors, the amendment as proposed now moves forward as a result of that vote to be the substantive motion. So I will repeat the motion. Is in principle, this council will get the water tank for Fisher's Hill, subject to the issues raised by the town clerk being addressed, and in the meantime, that Fisher's Hill is added to our watering regime of the council. So that's the motion proposed by Councillor Keary and seconded by Councillor Henderson. So, councillors, anyone wish to speak against the motion? So I move forward to vote. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Your Worship.
All those against? 2 against and abstentions 1. So council, thank you very much for bearing with us while we went through that process. We will move forward with getting that water tank once we've resolved the issues that the clerk's made. So now, any other questions around Glastonbury and Bloom, or can we move on to the climate emergency and resilience and ecological emergency advisory committee? Oh, sorry.
Okay, so
sorry, I do apologise. We've got a question from Councillor McDougall.
I know it is slightly diverting on this benches topic, but surely it's an extremely important issue that people are liable to be tripping in the high street due to these benches not being in place. Can we resolve it by any chance this evening?
If Councillor Ronnie-Dougal will permit me to resolve this, we will have to suspend standing orders to bring something in that's not on the agenda. Do you feel that it is important enough to do that?
Yeah.
So I now ask the clerk if we can suspend standing orders to deal with this issue. The issue being Councillor McDougall, would you like to speak to this?
So I would propose that we return one of those benches at least in order to address the problem with the uneven pavement. It's a simple solution, put one of the benches back.
Councillor Lyshan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to raise again the reason why benches were removed from that side of the High Street. And it was in part due to my experience in the Holland and Odom estate agency when there was a huge amount of antisocial behaviour immediately outside their glass door and window, and my being able to see that they had to put a massive bolt on the inside of their door. And when I asked why they had a bolt on the door, they said not only could they not allow anyone to work there on their own because of the threats that were coming from outside the door, but they also had the women, when they were working there, they became so afraid that they had to bolt the door very quickly. And that was the main reason why some of us requested that the benches were removed from that side of the High Street and put back on the other side by the church, where people weren't afraid to be at work. And I think it will be a complicated situation. The county council will say, yes, it's their pavement, but Mendip put the benches there. Then Mendip will say the town council asked to have the benches removed. I think I don't have time tomorrow, although I might be able to do it early in the morning. I think the most sensible thing to do is to get photographs, as I did of the paving slab that was rocking and was a trip hazard outside Yin and Yang, and actually send them to the Highway Authority. Don't mention the fact there were benches there, and ask them to deal with that as a trip hazard as soon as possible. I think that's the sensible approach.
So,
Chair, I accept that.
So thank you. So we've suspended standing orders. Councillors, we've just had a very sensible suggestion from the county councillor. Not having this as a proposal, just want to see a show of hands of all those in favour of the county councillor's proposal. Thank you. So thank you very much, Liz, for your wisdom in relation to this. If you can't get the photographs, Liz, would you be able to let the clerk's office know that, so that the clerk's office can do exactly the same? Thank you. So now I will...
Your Worship, can I just quickly come back in response? Tomorrow I'll ask one of our team to see if it's possible with a generator and a grinder to take the top off, provided it can be done safely. But I'll also assess it tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Councillors, thank you for your patience with that. I reinstate standing orders, and we now move on. Thank you, Councillor Serena Ronnie-Dougal. We now move on to the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee report.
Okay. So once again, we had a really good meeting. They've been excellent, these climate emergency group meetings. And we had Melissa's report updating us primarily on what's being done with the town hall and the installation of the roof and trying to decide the best sort of heating and so on. The information store, people might have seen, newsletters are being distributed along with how people can themselves help to reduce energy and so on in their homes. That's all still happening. A little bit of progress on citizens' assembly, but basically put forward to the new council, and for this to be a slow thing worked up towards. Discussion on waterways, which has come up again in Lindsay's report. And one thing that I thought people would be interested in here is that Lindsay has got access to a thermal imaging camera. And with this, you can do images of your house to see where you are losing most heat. Now, this will enable you to then take the measures that you need to take to reduce your energy requirements, which is all going to help us in terms of our carbon neutrality aim. So I just wanted to let everyone know that this thermal imaging camera is available if anybody is interested in learning where they are losing most heat of their houses. And we're putting that out so that the wider public in Glastonbury know that this camera is available. And that's going to be the next newsletter that goes out. It's all going to be about houses and homes, retrofitting, and all the rest of it. But as it's the last one in the 3 years that the Climate Emergency Group has been working, I thought you'd just be interested to know what we've achieved in 3 years. So, of course, number one was getting Melissa as our Climate Emergency Resilience Officer. She has done the most wonderful work. She's got the electric vehicle van for the council. She's helping to sort out the solar panel issue on the roof. She's helping to do the decarbonising of the town hall, which is in process. She held the open day for COP26, 2 seminars for COP26, and she's working with Bert to help to do the renovations and regeneration of Bailey's building so that it's all ecological. So wonderful work that she's doing. We also, ourselves as a group, held an open day to inform people on ways that they can reduce their ecological and climate destructive methods, how they could improve lifestyle and so on in terms of that. And we held 2 people's assemblies, which focused on food and transport and nature. And one of the things that came out of that, of course, was the community fridge, because that helps to reduce food waste. And that was the main thing about it, was reduction of food waste. The other thing that's come about it in the town deal is to have an agricultural ecological project, so that people can learn how to grow and how to farm in tune with nature rather than against that. As part of the town deal fund, we had asked for water fountains, of which we've now got 2 in the town centre, bicycle racks, some of which have been put up, some which we're still waiting, the left luggage lockers, which are there, and the notice boards. So that was all part of the town deal, asked for by the Climate Emergency Group, and up and running. And then the sunlit solar, so that people can have solar panels installed on their roofs at a reduced cost. 7 have already been installed. He's got enough work for the next 10 years, he says, with people coming to him. And slightly changed because of rising prices and difficulties getting hold of stuff. And what they're now doing is it's not just one installation for 4,000. People can choose what installation they want, but Glastonbury residents will get a 5% discount. So it's still giving the discount for Glastonbury residents, but it's widening the options because of the circumstances that are happening with the way the world is. And also for the town deal, the Climate Emergency Group recommended the Renewable Energy Park, which Avalon Community Energy took on as their project and which is going forward. And we suggested a 3rd allotment site because of the need for more allotments for food security, and this is in process. So for 3 years, I think not bad.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Climate Emergency and Ecological Emergency Group? So we now move on to Queen's Platinum Jubilee Advisory Committee. Councillors, I have been very pleased to take on chairing this group, which seems to have made an extraordinary impact on the year. The advice from the Palace was that there should be year-long celebrations. And of course, we started with the cutting of the Holy Thorn when we planted the pencil oak that you'll see in the car park here. Councillors, I am very pleased to say that we have seemed to, through our year-long ideas, seem to have inspired both the High Sheriff and the Lord Lieutenant into championing us as a town doing something for the Jubilee. Our next event is on St George's Day, the patron saint of England, where in this town hall there's going to be a Reclaim St George. Of course, patron saint of England, but he has deep connections to Glastonbury, as anyone who drinks in the George and Pilgrim will know. And this is both an event to look at the relationship between the patron saint of the country of England and Glastonbury, and also to devise a mummers play which will be performed in the Abbey on the Friday the 3rd of June, which will be the end of the pageant. So this will be something that is part of that pageant that we're going to have on the 3rd of June, will be performed in the Abbey, which is opening free on that day as part of the celebrations. So that's happening in the evening on St George's Day, 23rd of April. On the 19th of May, there will also be some celebrations of St Dunstan. That is St Dunstan's Day. St Dunstan, of course, being the saint from Glastonbury who became Archbishop of Canterbury, crowned 3 monarchs in his time. And what's interesting for the Platinum Jubilee, of course, is that St Dunstan's coronation ceremony is the same ceremony that's used today for the monarch, and the Queen was crowned using that ceremony. So there will be some events on that day, some in the Abbey, and I hope one here in the Town Hall, to look at that unique connection between the coronation of our monarch and Glastonbury's St Dunstan. There will be a long weekend of events happening. 2nd of June will begin with the Walk of the Sovereign Heart, which will be a pilgrimage taking a number of hours around the landscape of this sacred place, ending up, we hope, at a significant location, still to be finally ironed out, but it may be in St John's Churchyard at the Holy Thorn. Of course, there's a connection between the Holy Thorn and the Sovereign every December, to contemplate sovereignty, Glastonbury, and its relationship between the monarch and this place, followed by, in the evening, the lighting of a beacon on the Tor. We are currently being championed by the Lord Lieutenant's office to be featured in the national coverage of the lighting of beacons. And BBC has been in touch with the Clerk's office and myself around the potential of filming live from Glastonbury whilst on that evening. So that's something for us to perhaps look forward to, and that would be really great if that happened. Councillors, one of the things the BBC is very interested in is any stories that any of the members of our community may have that connect them to the monarch. So if we know of any members of our community that have an interesting Queen Elizabeth story to tell, or an interesting story in relation to the royal family, please can you let the Clerk's office know, have a chat with them and see if they would be interested in perhaps talking to the BBC on that day. BBC is certainly interested in that. So they want to know if any of the residents of this town has an interesting story that they'd like to relay to the nation on that Thursday. And then on the Sunday, so Friday is a free event in the Abbey with a procession. It will echo the pageant that happened 100 years ago, which is captured in the film of the Glastonbury Past and Present. We're going to recreate that. There's going to be a special thing for young people who will be queens and kings for the day, and they will take part in that pageant through the town, following the same route as the Buxton route, ending in the Abbey with brass band, St George et al. And then on the Sunday, we're going to have a Mayor's Sunday type procession from the town hall in the morning to the church for a service in the church to celebrate Majesty's amazing achievement, Platinum Jubilee. And following that, there will be a street party, as there was before. Councillors may recall, members of the community may recall, a street party on the Sunday, which I believe is the 5th of June, 5th of June. So quite a schedule of events, and something I hope councillors, if we're not on the council, will be able to enjoy taking part in. And if we are on the council, I hope that any of us left, if there are any of us, will get fully behind this. It is a once in a lifetime thing. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a monarchist or not, this is something extraordinary happening to this community of this country. Thank you. Any questions? Move on to neighbourhood plan. We are currently going through the neighbourhood plan, reviewing all of the aspects of it. There's a neighbourhood plan group that's doing this with Connor to make sure that anything that needs to be updated is updated. Councillors, if you wish to come along to any of those meetings whilst we're still here, I don't know if we've got one coming up before the end of the period.
That's a very, very good question. Yes, there is a neighbourhood plan steering group meeting on April the 26th, so 2 weeks from today.
Please do come along. Some of the things that we've talked about today in relation to housing in this town are really pertinent to this. And now that the local plan part 2 has been approved by Mendip, we need to move forward. The other thing is around local green spaces and local areas that we wish to protect, which have all been removed from Mendip's plan, I believe. So that's another thing that we have to think about. So do come along on the 26th if you can. That will be at what time, Connor?
That will be at 7 p.m, Your Worship, in this very room.
In this very room. Any questions around neighbourhood plan? We're trying to get this moved forward as quickly as possible towards referendum, which will be, unfortunately, in the next council year.
May I just add, Your Worship, sorry. If any councillors do wish to come along to that meeting, not in the sense of needing to gain permission by any means, but if you would like to, please do get in touch with me and I can send you the draft as it stands of the neighbourhood plan so that you can come along to the meeting prepared to suggest any of your own amendments.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we move on to item 15, reports from outside bodies, which is the town deal. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Worship. So I can tell you that you might remember I was saying that the work on the various business plans has been done in several cohorts. So there's certain groups of projects that have been moved forward first, and then the other groups have moved behind them. And the first group of 5, which is the Bailey's building, the Light Factory, which is what we know as the Red Brick building, the Enterprise and Innovation Centre, which is the one that the County Council are promoting, the Enabling Project, which we've heard about, which is the sorting out of the travellers issue, and the Abbey Piazza. All those have now got through that piece of work, so that has been done, and they have all scored more than 1 on the measure that is put to see whether they're viable under the Government Green Book. There are 2 more projects that are going to be done by the end of April, and the rest are all on schedule for June. So a huge amount of work has been done. It's absolutely amazing to me that after all these years of having Mendip, when we never seem to get anything to happen, in the last year or 2 of its existence, suddenly we have had this huge amount of work done by officers at Mendip to get this through for us, because it is an incredible amount of work, I have to tell you, that they've done. It's going to be scrutinised pretty thoroughly. There's board members who are looking at each project that's separate from the project to scrutinise it. It then gets scrutinised by Mendip. It then gets scrutinised by Mendip's cabinet, and it will then be signed off by the 151 officer and the chairman before it actually goes to government. So there's going to be a lot of extra, maybe tweaking, but certainly scrutinising to make sure that this goes through with an opportunity for this really to happen. So I think this is really quite amazing when I look at it. And what really cheers me up is the fact that this council 20 years ago set up a Moorlands committee when first the derelict factories were sort of taken over by the RDA, and with the offer from Nick McLean, the council were persuaded to actually try and rescue the Red Brick building and some of the other property on the site when it was sort of taken over by the younger generation who were adamant that they didn't want to see it demolished.
Yeah.
And we actually have managed to retain those buildings and the listed buildings. So all those factory sites where their workplaces to work that were taken away, that were owned by the private sector, are now owned by the public, by us, the town. And it has taken 20 years. So I was reflecting on the time that I've been on this council, and I think that the magic number is 25, because when I was first elected, which is just coming up 50 years, it took us 25 years to stop them building an inner relief road and finally get the outer relief road built. 25 years. So just for new councillors not to feel, and Serena's right, to achieve what they've done is pretty good. But if you've got to have the big things, you've got to have a long plan, and you've got to have a vision, and you've got to be prepared to stick at it and not give in when it all gets a bit dodgy. But it took 25 years for that. The Herbiesfield project has taken us years to do. It was a vision that we wanted somewhere permanent for the fair. We bought it on the basis that we didn't have the money necessarily to complete the whole thing, but at least we went on and did it. I think of the work that Mike Free did with the lift, and I know there was councillors in this chamber who were really adamant that we shouldn't have done it, and it was a lot of money and it should never have happened, but it's done. It's given us access for all now to the council chamber and to the offices, and it's all been paid for over the period of time. It seems a huge gamble at the time. St Dunstan's House, again, I remember having battles with councillors around this table who couldn't see what on earth we'd want to buy that for. But what an asset it's turned out for the town. And now the town deal's come along to actually be able to deliver a really good asset for the town. So my plea to you all, if you get re-elected, is to have the long view, and it won't just happen. You won't get here and suddenly change the world, but just be content to have a vision, and then you can get there. Because if it's a good sound idea, the funding will come along for it eventually, and you will actually deliver it. So don't be afraid of taking on the big issues and actually seeing if you can't, because you can change things dramatically when it looks as if everything's against you. And I've sort of sat here long enough now to see 6 town clerks, and George Carlin was the last town clerk of the Borough Council, and he wrote in the minute book, which we had up here for, I can't remember what we had it up here for. I think we were celebrating a borough 300 years or something. Right. But the minute book was up in here, and he'd written in there all the assets were passed across to mend it. And one of the things that he put was the fact that the town council owned 1/3 of the housing stock. Wow. Now just think about that. 1/3 of the housing stock was council houses owned by the town. Now, is it any wonder that there's now a housing crisis? I remember voting on several occasions for them to not be sold, for them not to be passed across to various things. We were told it had to be done. Lo and behold, we know here in other parts of Somerset, they managed to hang on to theirs. So actually, we weren't told the truth. It was just a policy that people had to get rid of them. But one of my sort of sadnesses, if you like, especially as an independent councillor, is that I need to try and persuade the rest of you that it is a good idea to do things. And one of the things I regret is not being able to persuade you all that it was a sensible thing to do for us to build some council houses. Because whilst we've now got the land which we own, which we've now finally got into the local plan, I totally accept that we need to find more allotments, but I think we should have allotments in each of the wards, not just in one particular place. We should be able to get to them with a wheelbarrow. You shouldn't have to get in a car and drive to where the allotments are. But have a long vision. And what you need to do is build council houses, proper council houses, not cheap, ugly. Look at what Michael Evers has managed to do. Yeah. He's managed to put them onto a legal footing where they can never be sold. And that has transformed that village because the young people can afford to live there. And I think that the new council needs to seriously think about this, because you could build decent council houses that are retained in the town for the next generation. And We can't solve all the homeless problems, but we could help with our own community by providing proper housing. So I leave you thinking about that, hopefully, and my bow out is just to thank you all for the pleasure of the coming to the evenings. I love the debate. I thoroughly enjoyed my 50 years, and if we're not too late, I'd be only too pleased to buy all a pint of George. Obviously, you can buy them yourself. You can all stand for
Councillor Madu.
Oh, yes. I just thought I might add that it's Connor's birthday, so perhaps you should invite him over to.
Oh, happy birthday to Connor.
Thank you.
I think he was trying to keep quiet about that. But 21 again, I believe.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
Not quite.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. On behalf of the council, it's just extraordinary to think that someone so youthful could have been on this council for 50 years. I know that it was quite unusual when you were elected at 7 years old, but you'll... what an extraordinary achievement. And absolutely, I must say, as when I realised against my better judgment that I'd been hoodwinked by Denny Michel into being deputy mayor, which meant that I probably would be mayor after saying I would never do it. The person who I looked up to as the model mayor of the town was your good self. And thank you so much, Ian, for everything you've done for the town. So, councillors, we now move on to reports. Oh, we've done that. Mayor's announcements. Very quickly, because I see that there is a bar waiting for us. This has been the first month in the whole of the period of time that I have been mayor for these last 2 years, where something resembling my experience of being mayor in 2016-17 has occurred. I have been to events as first citizen of the town. We had a peace vigil, as you'll remember, on the 19th of March for Ukraine. Very well attended. One of the attendees was Ukrainian, who was in tears. She said, I've been feeling so helpless, and this event was something I was able to do, and thanked us, and it was quite remarkable. On the 20th of March, next day, I attended the High Sheriff's Service in Wells Cathedral, and again was absolutely knocked out by the High Sheriff Thomas Shepherd that we'd had. He will be a hard act to follow. And Thomas has championed the town and what we were doing around the Jubilee, as indeed Ted Allen, who is there as Deputy Lieutenant, is the Deputy Lieutenant who suggested to the BBC they might like to consider Glastonbury for their coverage. So that was a pleasure to go there. Also there was Deputy Lieutenant Edward Baden-Coward, who, with a number of other people related to the lieutenancy, would really like Glastonbury to think about World Heritage status. And that's something perhaps the new council can put its mind to. On the 7th of April, I attended the Heart of the Tribes new exhibition, had an opening. If you've not been to the Heart of the Tribe on the High Street, Kim Von Coles has been so amazing with the Glastonbury Mural Trail. She has her own exhibition in there, and what a remarkable artist she is. Great credit to the town. And today, I have had the immense pleasure of judging, it was actually quite difficult, the Forget-Me-Not Easter bonnets. All I can say is that they should have all been first prize, but I did have to upset 20 odd other people by selecting one to be first prize. The bonus for me in that was that I had to stand with a lot of wonderful, beautiful women to have a photo taken, and it was an absolute pleasure to be with the Forget-Me-Not Club today, who have, I must say, have now made me their I'm not sure what the correct term is, but is it president? I don't know. But I've become an overseeing entity for them, let's put it that way, which is a great pleasure too. So that's the update. Of course, this is my last meeting as a full meeting as chair. Whatever happens in the election, I shall be opening the next meeting of the Town Council on the 17th of May. But I would just like to say how remarkable it's been to have been involved with this council as mayor for 2 years in a row. We've been through a really tough time as a town, and it's been an extraordinary time for us to be councillors, to go through COVID, lockdown, all those things. And what an incredible time. If we remember at the very start of those 2 years, we had to deal with the death of Denny Michelle. We've also seen Councillor John Brunston, Alderman John Brunston, passing away as well. It's been extraordinary time for this council. And my great pleasure in the fact that although we're not all of the same opinions, I think as a council, we generally rub along very well and get things done. And I think that our focus is for the good of this community. And so I'd like, as someone you've made mayor, I would like to thank you all as councillors for all the wonderful resolutions that we have made here in this council over the last 2 years. Thank you so much.
Well done, John.
Yeah, good, John.
Communications and announcements. I know that Councillor Keary has...
Yeah, come on, you haven't spoken yet.
I don't know if there are any communications to go ahead, but this is an open announcement because you know I'm not standing at the next election, so I'm retiring. But just reflecting and hearing, as Councillor Tucker said, haven't been on council quite as long as he has. But one of the pleasures of being on council is being alongside Councillor Tucker and seeing what he has proposed for the town and the long-term strategies that he has often put forward that have been picked up by the council. And I won't rub it too hard by talking about the housing issue. But reflecting on the time that I've been on the council, people used to ask me, when all the photographs were up on the wall, people would say, why haven't you been mayor? Well, I was mayor, but the photograph I had up showed me with a beard, and nobody recognised. But what I did inherit was, and it's a nice little thing. And this arose because on a particular occasion, and this is June 1967, 87 rather, if you can remember back that far, 1987, because during my time as mayor, we had a visit from one of the representatives of Glastonbury, Connecticut, and he suggested that they had, coming up in 1993, the 300th anniversary of the Charter of Glastonbury, Connecticut, and did we think we could get any people to come to represent the town of Glastonbury in Glastonbury, Connecticut. So arising out of that, and again with Councillor Tucker, we set up a committee and we proposed that people start saving now to get to Glastonbury, Connecticut in 1993. And eventually 80 of us went, including the town band, and it was an absolutely amazing occasion. The town band, who were at the height, I would say, of their prowess at that time as an excellent competition band, played concerts in Glastonbury, Connecticut. We were hosted by families. We gave us a donation from Glastonbury here, Glastonbury Chair, and we had a great time for a week hosting in Glastonbury. And most of us, having got that far, decided to stay on a little bit further and see a bit more of America. So it became a fantastic occasion. Whether that could ever be done again, because there's not actually a good twinning that far away. It might be better we moved in Bristol or something. At least we could go regularly on the bus. I also got, as it happens, I'm seeing as we were talking about a drink, I was given the key of Glastonbury, Connecticut. As it happened, it was a souvenir key and it acts as a bottle opener. Anyway, the time has been good. I agree with what Councillor Tucker said. The projects that went on in this town hall has been changed with a project that was good and which was criticised so much by the councillors. However, we are where we are. I've enjoyed my time here. I don't think I'll miss it, to be honest. In the sense that things have to move on. There's time to move on. I have other things I can do, but again, echoing the mayor, it's been happy times here. We've all gone on, we've had our disagreements, whatever else. But the new council has bigger responsibility than we ever had with the town deal coming back. This is a huge occasion for Glastonbury, for money to be spent. And I just hope that new councillors who may be completely new will take that on board and realise there are projects. It's not a clean slate when you join the council. There are projects that need to be continued, and I wish them all well in doing that. I would also mention, in the last 6 years, when Jared has been town clerk, we have probably got through more than I remember many other town clerks doing over the years. I think I only have seen 5 town clerks. I wasn't here when George Harlan was town clerk. I came in after the borough. But we've had our town clerks, we've got things done, but the last 6 years have been full of so much action going on. And we won't see, and I meant to see Jared at another council meeting, so I wish him well in his retirement as well, and thank him for the work that he's done.
Here, here. Thank you very much.
And good luck, Connor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John, if I may.
Yes, Councillor.
What John didn't mention is that myself and John are still going to be a board member of Austin Memorial Homes, which is an organised charity. And I should still be a board member of Somerset Care. How long that's going to go on for, I don't know, but hopefully it goes on for a long time. So we'll be seeing, John and I will be seeing each other from time to time.
Very good.
And talking of continuity, Your Worship, perhaps I should have also said that Councillor Liz Leishan has now moved over as a community member of the Town Deal Board, and I've been asked to join as a business member of the Town Deal Board, so there will be some continuity there. And obviously I'll be only too pleased to talk to whoever gets elected from the Town Council to take on the Town Deal Board to sort of bring them up to speed.
Thank you. Well, all I can say is all 3 of you are going to be very hard acts to follow on this council, that's for sure. Councillors, are there any other communications and announcements?
There is an item on the agenda.
One item on the agenda, John.
Yes, you're quite right. I've actually written over it. So, suggested date for the award of the Freedom of Glastonbury to Mr. Evis. Paul?
What about that? Do you want to continue with it?
Perhaps, councillors, if we wait to talk about that, because I did ask councillors if there's any other announcements. So, Paul.
Okay, just a very quick one, because I just want to pay tribute and pay attention to another sung hero in the town, a gentleman who I met some years ago, who told me that he regularly goes around town taking down the unwanted stickers, covering up and trying to clean off the graffiti, looking after the town, and he and a friend regularly walk around the town every day, checking and reporting back to me, and I think reporting back to the town clerk, and in future reporting back to you, Connor, and that's David Wasson, an unsung hero, but thank you very much, David, because he does a lot of work behind the scenes and needs our congratulations.
Thank you. Hear, hear. So, councillors, we now move on to the suggested date for the freedom of the town for Michael Evis. This will be the date when we present him with the free man's address, is the correct term. Gerard.
Your Worship, thank you. The evening, or the event for Michael Evis will be on May the 3rd. And I do believe he's bringing a party of around 25 people with him.
And that will be in this chamber.
It will be, yes.
So, councillors, the invitation is extended to councillors only, and will also be extended to all other free men and women of the town, as is normal. And it will be held in here.
And time again?
The time?
I'm Connor.
7 p.m. Yes, I believe. Yes.
No partners.
I look at Connor. I think that was the decision, because we've got a file limit in this room. No partners?
That was the suggestion, purely because then the number of people in this room for a buffet would perhaps be a little bit uncomfortable. So it was envisaged that councillors, you could probably survive on your own for a little bit.
Councillor Smythe.
Ian, we still be councillors.
Could I propose that we have an exception to that so that the 3 senior councillors who won't be here bring their partners?
That is an excellent suggestion, Councillor Smythe. Councillors, are we happy to extend the partner invite to the 3 councillors who are retiring? Councillor Coles, Councillor Keary, and Councillor Duffy. Yeah. There we are. Yeah,
Thank you.
there we are. So, councillors, please do RSVP, because I think that Connor will need to know, or Gerard will need to know in relation to the buffet, etc., how many folk we are intending to accommodate. But I was very keen that the council that awarded the freedom of the town is the council that will be present when Michael receives the address.
Good idea.
Thank you. So, councillors, we now move on swiftly to correspondence. We've got road closure, Channels Hill Road, close. Gerard?
2 items on correspondence, Your Worship. One is, or as you've already said, is a closure of the entire road of Chalice Hill Close, and the work is required to excavate approximately 100 metres of the footway and carriageway to install duct for fibre cabling and also associated works. And that is to take place on
13th of June.
I can't see it quickly. 13th of June. 13th of June. Beg your pardon. Thank you, Your Worship.
And receipt of a petition to the flying of the Ukrainian flag over the town hall.
And Your Worship, we've had two letters of complaint. One was a petition with some 22 signatures to it, and the other was an individual complaint, both in writing. I've dealt with both, but I put it on the agenda because I wanted to share with you the response from the National Association of Local Councils, who I have sought, who have clearly guided us that the flying of another nation's flag over an authority building is perfectly acceptable. So there's nothing that we have done that's wrong. And whilst a few individuals claim that what we've done is not the correct route, I can assure you that both from the guidance of government and NALC that we have followed correct procedures. And I wanted to share that with you this evening.
Thank you, councillors. I was stopped in the street and accused of treason for flying of the Ukrainian flag on the town hall. And I pointed out that with Glastonbury's historic status of being independent of state and monarchy for all those hundreds of years, you could say the same when any other flag is flying, but I thought better of it. So, news release.
Before I go there, Your Worship, if I may, I will also share with you that I've had an email of support for the flying of the Ukrainian flag from happens to be one of the directors of BERT, whose wife is Ukrainian, and they were both so enthralled to be able to see the flag flying in support of their nation.
Thank you. I think that generally people are quite pleased that we took that action. News release. We are in purdah, councillors, so we have to be very careful about what we talk about. But I wonder whether there's any merit in asking our 3 retiring councillors who have so much experience, whether they would care to send Gerard a few choice memories, and that we could make a press release about the significant loss of 3 excellent councillors to this council through retirement.
I've already done that through the Central Somerset Gazette. That's up to Ian and John there.
So that how wonderful. And but I wonder whether this council could issue a press release to that effect. John, would you be happy to share some extra memory that you might not have put in to your...
I'll have a think about that.
Thank you. Would you be happy with that, John and Ian? Thank you.
When you need it right, Gerard?
Where are we down? Tuesday, end of next week? By the end of next week?
Right, John.
Actions arising from the meeting.
Quite a number, Your Worship, if I may just quickly go through them. There's an action for me to inquire why there was no police meetings with the public, if you recall the beginning of the agenda this evening. There's an action for me to
circulate the posters which were displayed at the Tour Leisure presentation on the weekend. There's an action for me to write to both Terry Napper and Liz Lowson and thank them for their dedication over recent years on behalf of the Town Council. There's an action for me to chase the asset transfer officer who's working with us out of Mendip, to identify where we are with that. There's an action for me to check with the support of the responsible financial officer about Zurich Insurance and what their fossil fuel involvement is. And I've better words than that, but you know what I'm trying to say. An action for us to observe the pavement at the co-op and try to rectify and sort as quickly as possible with the appropriate other authorities. There's an action for us to look into the all of that around the Fisher's Hill and the water container and all the safety bits that I've raised with that earlier. And I think that was it, Your Worship. So quite a lot of action this evening.
Thank you. So there's one other action that I think we should take as a council, seeing that as a result of the election, none of us may be sat around this table, and that is to have a formal vote of thanks to Gerard Tucker as our exceptional clerk, has been mentioned earlier on, and to show our appreciation of him with a round of applause.
Thank you.
So we now move into confidential session. So I'd like to ask members of the public and non-councillors if they'd be happy.
Would you be comfortable with Liz stayed?
Yes, I'm happy for Liz to stay. But ask you to leave as